Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Red Cat holdings. It is time for another update, and here we are looking to see if the music has stopped, as we have developed a structure that doesn't need any further extensions to higher prices. So we are looking for evidence that a top would be in place, and until that is the case, of course we are able to still track continuation to higher prices, but we are within a high risk region as we are still trading at very elevated levels. Now, for context, for any of you who might be new, on this chart we have been tracking a couple of ideas. So mainly what we would like to see is an initial 5-wave move to the upside within the larger time frame. So we have been tracking here a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, and now what would be a wave 3 still unfolding to generate even higher prices. And within this wave 3, we would expect to reach the ideal target, at least, the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, which sits at $38.7. So far, we haven't gotten there, but even if we did, within this pattern to the upside, we wouldn't have been able to consider a top to be in place within this wave 3, as we were tracking a leading diagonal, meaning that within this structure, within this wave 3, we are looking to build an ABC pattern, not a 5-wave pattern. So we would either be looking to form an initial wave A within this movement to the upside, then extend in a wave B and a wave C to fulfill the expectations, or we would be looking at an ABC structure, which would mark a quite substantial top. We wouldn't need any further extensions to even head to new all-time lows. Now, that is not necessarily a preference for me, and I would still be tracking some levels of support even in that scenario where this would be an ABC pattern, but it would even overlap quite heavily with the area of support we would be tracking for a white wave B regardless. So this remains our primary interpretation. And to be clear, there is also an additional scenario that would allow this to build a wave 3 to the upside in a more direct fashion. I'm not necessarily a fan of it based on the internal developments within this area, but basically we would be able to consider this to be an ABC structure, in which case a wave C could be taking us in a more direct fashion to higher prices with a double 1-2-1-2 setup formation in this area. Not necessarily a fan, once again, due to the structure that has formed here within this movement to the upside, which I am quite strongly considering as an ABC pattern, which is not what we would expect within an ABC structure in this area, So within our two preferred interpretations, we are looking at a quite substantial drop, with the minimum being here to reach $4.8 at a 38.2% retracement, in the assumption the wave A has a top in place and doesn't extend directly higher, whereas if it does, we would need to adjust this area of support. So we are definitely within a high risk region, but even with the difficulties of this chart, even with the complexity of the structures, we have managed to provide here a high quality trade setup. We have identified within this supposed wave 5 to the upside an initial 5-wave pattern, for which we provided a high probability area of support once we had a top within the wave A and we started the larger correction. Yes, we provided this area of support, and the theory strongly suggests that after an initial 5-wave move to the upside, we would be looking for a 3-wave correction into the support zone, after which we expect trend continuation within at least another 5-wave pattern. Everything has been delivered flawlessly. Yes, we have built an ending diagonal within this wave C, but it has delivered within its expectations, and we have even identified that this was going to likely build a diagonal pattern, since we have only managed to create here a 3-wave move to the upside. We were looking initially for an impulse, but it didn't manage to generate one within a likely structure, so we have been preferring this interpretation. And most recently, we provided even another trade setup after this massive push to the upside, for which we had this large area of support. Then we provided even another internal area of support here. And yes, overall, it delivered very, very nicely in my opinion. and can really be too pretentious. It has followed through its expectations, where now, since the previous video, we were able to consider a top to be in place within this wave 5. So you see, we were tracking this as a potential 5-wave pattern complete. We didn't need any additional extensions to higher prices to consider a top to be in place, and this remains the case even today, even as we would still like to see extensions to higher prices, even as we would still have some ideas that could allow such extensions. The yellow interpretation is considered as complete, and we will be tracking continuation to higher prices within a different scenario. So we would be watching here a potential leading diagonal within my first interpretation of an extension. Yeah, here we would have a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, a wave 3, a wave 4, and a wave 5. This count might actually look a bit better, as within this wave 3, I might like a little bit better the idea of an A, B, C pattern to have formed here, and the area of support that we would be able to track for such an interpretation would even make sense, and would still be holding, as we would be watching the 61.8% retracement. So the support zone is down to $13.6, where we have pushed perfectly into this last support level before creating the reversal to higher prices. And one word of caution within this structure, I am looking at a potential initial 5-wave move to the downside. So even though technically it is possible for us to look for extensions within a wave 5 in this movement, yeah, I will even be tracking here this idea of an A, B, C structure. Just as well, I can be looking for the idea of a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Nothing is preventing this pattern to extending directly lower, and nothing is preventing me from tracking an area of resistance up to $17.5, where only with a break above that can we really start considering with better probabilities this idea of continuation to higher prices. So the risk actually comes from two regions. Firstly, we have a potential ABC structure, we have a potential larger time frame count complete, we are towards the end of a larger trend, and we don't need any extensions to higher prices. We have already fulfilled the expectations, but then within the smaller time frame, we have identified an initial 5-wave move to the downside. And I am not imposing that it has to be a 5-wave structure, I am not imposing that it must extend to lower prices, but there is substantial risk, and we haven't yet broken the relevant levels of resistance for such an expectation. So for those reasons, I cannot look at this extension within a wave 5 in orange as a high probability structure, and even though we can track an internal area of support, I wouldn't consider this initial push to the upside to necessarily be a 5-wave pattern. It is actually quite difficult to track it as one. I would probably prefer something like an A, B, C movement to the upside, and the area of support would allow us to retrace here down to $14.2, but nothing really is strongly suggesting that we would see a successful reversal from this region into higher prices. And to be clear, even this movement to the downside doesn't need to build this idea of an impulse we would be tracking within the blue expectation. The theory suggests that after the 5-wave pattern, we would be looking for a 3-wave correction and then a 5-wave move to the downside in trend continuation, yeah? It doesn't state that it must be a wave 3 that gets followed up by wave 4 and a wave 5. And in fact, if I am to look at this initial push to the downside, it doesn't seem to be impulsive yet. It is still able to create a larger impulse, but as of now, nothing is strongly suggesting this to be the case. And ultimately, with a break below $13.6, we would need to be prepared for one of two outcomes. So I would consider that either a more substantial top would be in place within this movement, yeah, we wouldn't be looking for continuation to higher prices, potentially even the blue structure follows through, and then I could be looking for the other type of extension that we could be tracking within this area, which is for this to have been an A, B, C structure, yeah? We would still be tracking this as an A, B, C movement to the upside, but within an initial wave A, where a follow-up wave B can still take place and the wave C can take us to higher prices. but this would actually assume that we get a reset of the current low we have formed in this push to the downside, as the correction was quite immediate in its reversal, and if we are to form a wave B in a larger pattern, I would probably prefer to form a larger wave B than what we created in this internal movement to the downside, in this internal correction. Since it is within a smaller degree, we expect it to have a smaller correction as well. Now, that is the typical expectation, and if we are to extend directly to higher prices with a lot more strength, I would probably even prefer other scenarios. But for now, I don't believe necessarily that should be a high focus for us, and it's not going to be a high probability structure regardless. We would be watching, however, the support zone down to $12, where with a break even beyond that, we would need to be even more prepared for something like the blue structure to follow through. And the blue structure really only represents the idea of a more substantial top being in place within this overall movement to the upside, where likely we would be looking to reach at least $4.8. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoy our content and want to support us directly, check out our channel membership, and as a thank you for any of these actions, I would like to invite you to sign up to our channel newsletter, which is completely free and provides you access to our monthly top picks, where we identify for you high quality structures and actionable opportunities really. And sure, some of them might not reach the intended area of support we are considering as high probability within the month, but that doesn't mean there will not be opportunities within those stocks, of course, and we will be keeping an active eye on them. If you're interested, the link for sign up is in the description, and other than that, let me know what else you would like me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.